Captain Jake Morrison stared at the screen in disbelief. The object floating near Jupiter was massive, easily 10 times the size of his ship. It had appeared without warning, just sitting there like it owned the space around the giant planet. "Sir, we're getting a signal," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. The screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that definitely wasn't human. The creature had pale blue skin that seemed to glow from within. Its head was larger than a human's, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. When it spoke, the words came through their translation system in perfect English. "Greetings, primitive species. I am Ambassador Zektar of the Galactic Harmony Council. Your world has been selected for integration into our workforce program." Jake felt his blood run cold. "Integration? What does that mean?" "Your species shows promise as laborers due to your apparent physical durability. You will serve the greater good of galactic civilization. Surrender is not optional." Before Jake could respond, the alien continued. "We have studied your communications. We know your capabilities. Resistance is pointless. You have 30 of your days to prepare for peaceful transition." The screen went dark. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders, but what orders could he give? They were just an exploration ship, not a warship. "Get me Earth Command," Jake said quietly. Priority 1. Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Kane was having the worst day of her career. As the planet's leading expert on the possibility of alien life, she had spent years preparing for first contact. But nothing had prepared her for this. The alien ships had appeared over major cities worldwide just hours after Jake's encounter. They hung in the sky like dark clouds, their presence impossible to ignore. Every news channel was showing the same footage over and over again. "They're demanding surrender," Colonel Pete Adams said as he entered Lisa's lab. Pete was a career military man, the kind who had spent his life preparing for wars that might never come. Now he looked like he wished he had been wrong about that. "What do we know about them?" Pete asked. Lisa pulled up her analysis on the main screen. "They call themselves the Galactic Harmony Council. From what I can tell, it's an alliance of 12 different alien species. They seem to have been watching us for a while." "Watching us? Why?" "They're looking for workers. They think we're physically strong enough to be useful but primitive enough to control easily." Lisa's voice was bitter. "They're treating us like cattle." Pete studied the images of the alien ships. "What about their technology?" "Advanced. Way beyond anything we have. Their ships use some kind of energy shielding that makes our weapons useless. They demonstrated that by shutting down 3 of our satellites without even trying hard." "So, we can't fight them?" "Not with conventional weapons, no." Pete was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe we don't need to fight them the conventional way." The alien observation posts went up quickly. They were small, dome-shaped structures that appeared overnight in major population centers. The aliens called them monitoring stations, but everyone knew what they really were. They were a message. "We're watching you. Don't try anything stupid." But the aliens inside these posts were learning something too, something that was making them very uncomfortable. Science Coordinator Valine studied the environmental readings from the Earth posts with growing concern. The gravity readings had to be wrong. No species could possibly evolve in such crushing conditions. The atmospheric composition was toxic. The temperature variations were extreme. And yet, the humans seemed to thrive in it. "The children," Valine said to her assistant. "Show me the recordings of the human children again." The screen showed human youngsters playing in what the aliens considered a disaster zone. They were running around in temperatures that would freeze a Vorthak in minutes, laughing and throwing frozen water at each other. Some of them had removed their outer coverings, exposing their skin to the deadly cold. "How are they not dying?" Valine's assistant asked. "I don't know, but I'm beginning to think we may have made an error in our assessment." In the alien observation post in New York, Junior Technician Mirhal was having similar thoughts. He watched through the sensors as humans went about their daily lives, doing things that should have been impossible. He had watched a human female consume a liquid that their sensors identified as poison. Not only did she not die, she seemed to enjoy it. He had watched human males engage in physical combat for entertainment, hitting each other with force that would shatter a galactic council member's bones. Most disturbing of all, he had watched human parents deliberately expose their offspring to dangerous situations. They called it playing outside. To Mir Al, it looked like attempted murder. These readings can't be correct, he muttered, running the scans again. But the readings were always the same. Humans routinely survived in conditions that would kill most galactic species in minutes. They consumed toxins for pleasure. They deliberately exposed themselves to radiation from their star. They lived on a world that was actively trying to kill them, and they seemed to like it. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison and his crew were learning things too. They had been captured during a second encounter with the alien fleet, and were now prisoners aboard the flagship. But being prisoners on an alien ship was teaching them valuable lessons. The aliens were physically fragile. Jake had seen one of them injured when it accidentally walked into a wall. A gentle bump that would barely bruise a human had left the alien with what appeared to be serious internal damage. They couldn't survive without their environmental suits. The ship's atmosphere was carefully controlled, and any variation sent the aliens into panic. Jake had noticed that they kept the temperature, humidity, and air composition within very narrow ranges. Most importantly, they had never dealt with hostile prisoners before. Their security was designed to contain cooperative species who would accept their fate peacefully. They had no idea how to handle humans who were actively looking for ways to escape. "We need to get word back to Earth," Jake whispered to Amy during their daily exercise period. The aliens allowed them this time, not understanding that humans needed physical activity to stay healthy. How? They're monitoring everything. Maybe, but I don't think they understand us as well as they think they do. Back on Earth, the 30-day deadline was approaching fast. The aliens had made their demands clear. Humanity would submit to integration or face the consequences. Most world leaders were preparing to surrender. The alien technology was simply too advanced to fight, but Colonel Pete Adams was not most world leaders. He was a soldier, and soldiers don't surrender without a fight. "You're talking about starting a war we can't win," one of the generals said during the emergency meeting. "Maybe," Pete replied, "but I'm starting to think these aliens don't know what war actually is. They're used to dealing with species that give up without a fight. They've never met anyone who fights back." Dr. Lisa Kane had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now she spoke up. "Pete might be right. I've been studying their behavior, and I don't think any of their species evolved as predators. They don't understand conflict the way we do." "What do you mean?" "I mean they come from peaceful worlds. Worlds without large predators, without extreme weather, without the constant struggle for survival that shaped human evolution. They've never had to learn how to fight because they've never had to fight." Pete smiled grimly. "So what you're saying is they don't know how to play dirty." "Exactly. And from what I can tell, humans are very good at playing dirty." The 30 days were almost up. Around the world, people waited to see what would happen. Would humanity surrender to these powerful aliens, or would they fight a hopeless war? But as the deadline approached, more and more humans were starting to think the same thing Pete and Lisa had realized. These aliens might be advanced, but they had never faced anything like humanity before. They had never fought a species that evolved on a death world. They had never encountered beings who were used to fighting for survival every single day of their lives. The aliens were about to learn why Deathworlders don't play fair, and they were going to learn the hard way. The 30-day deadline had passed 3 days ago. The aliens were growing impatient, but they hadn't started their attack yet. That gave Colonel Pete Adams time to do what he did best: plan for war. He stood in the makeshift command center they had built in an abandoned mine shaft in Colorado. The location was perfect. Deep underground, shielded from alien sensors, and with multiple escape routes. The aliens might have superior technology, but they had never fought an enemy that could disappear into the ground. "What do we know about their ground forces?" Pete asked Dr. Ben Clark, a military strategist who had been studying alien movements for weeks. Ben pulled up a map on their salvaged computer system. "They've established 47 observation posts worldwide. Each post has between 10 and 15 aliens, they're all wearing environmental suits even in mild weather. Environmental suits? That's the interesting part. Our surveillance teams have been watching them and they never take the suits off, not even when they're inside their own buildings. Pete raised an eyebrow. Never? Never. Temperature drops below 70 degrees. They add extra heating units. Humidity goes above 40%, they start their dehumidifiers. They can't handle normal Earth weather. Meanwhile, Marine Lieutenant Amy Foster was learning the same thing from a much closer distance. She was crawling through the woods outside, the alien post near Seattle, watching the aliens through her binoculars. What she saw made her smile. The aliens were struggling with everything. A light rain had started an hour ago and they had retreated inside their dome. Through the transparent walls, she could see them adjusting their equipment frantically. "Control, this is Recon Team Alpha," she whispered into her radio. "The targets are having problems with basic weather conditions. Repeat, they cannot handle normal rain." The voice of her commander came back through her earpiece. "Confirmed, Alpha. What's their response to the precipitation?" Amy watched as one of the aliens slipped on the wet ground outside their dome. The creature fell hard and didn't get up for several minutes. When it finally did, it was moving like it was badly hurt. "Sir, one of them just fell down on wet grass. It's acting like it broke something." "Copy that, Alpha. Continue observation." Amy settled in to watch. This was going to be educational. Back at the alien flagship, Science Coordinator Val Ean was reading reports that made no sense. The monitoring posts were sending data that had to be wrong. According to the sensors, humans were not just surviving on this death world, they were thriving. "Show me the food consumption data again," she told her assistant. The screen displayed a list of substances that humans regularly consumed. Most of them were classified as toxins in the Galactic database. Ethanol, which was used as a cleaning solvent on most civilized worlds. Capsaicin, which was used as a weapon. Caffeine, which was a mild poison that could cause heart failure in most species. Humans drank these things for pleasure. "There has to be an error in our translation systems," Valine muttered. "I checked 3 times. The translations are correct. Humans deliberately consume toxic substances and claim to enjoy them." Valine pulled up another file. This one showed humans engaging in what they called sports. The footage showed humans deliberately hitting each other with clubs, throwing each other to the ground, and crashing into each other at high speeds. "They're attacking each other," she said. "No, ma'am. According to our cultural analysis, this is how they entertain themselves." Valine felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. What kind of species found violence entertaining? On Earth, Dr. Lisa Kane was asking herself a similar question, but from the opposite perspective. She was studying captured alien communications, trying to understand how their society worked. "They've never had a war," she told Pete during their daily briefing. "Not one in their entire recorded history. Never, never. None of the 12 species in their council have ever fought each other. They've never even fought among themselves. Their entire civilization is based on cooperation and harmony." Pete stared at her. "You're telling me they don't know how to fight?" "They don't know how to fight because they've never needed to. Their worlds are peaceful. No large predators, no extreme weather, no competition for resources. They've lived in perfect harmony for thousands of years. And now they're trying to take over a world full of humans." "Exactly. They have no idea what they're getting into." Pete smiled grimly. "Then maybe it's time we showed them." The first real test came when Amy Foster's team decided to probe the alien defenses. They had been watching the Seattle Post for a week, learning the aliens' routines. Now it was time to see how they responded to pressure. Amy and her team moved closer to the alien dome under cover of darkness. The aliens had sensors, but they were designed for space warfare, not for detecting humans moving through dense forest. "Remember, we're not here to fight," Amy whispered to her team. "We're here to learn." They got within 50 meters of the dome before the aliens detected them. Immediately, alarms started blaring. Lights flooded the area around the post. The aliens came pouring out of their dome, weapons ready. But they were clumsy in their environmental suits. They moved slowly, like they were underwater. Their weapons were powerful, but they couldn't aim them accurately while wearing their bulky gloves. Amy and her team melted back into the forest. The aliens fired their energy weapons at shadows hitting trees and rocks. They were shooting at nothing, but they kept shooting anyway. "They're panicking," one of Amy's Marines whispered. "Yeah," Amy replied. "They've never done this before." The aliens searched the woods for 2 hours, but they found nothing. Amy's team had vanished like ghosts. When the aliens finally gave up and went back inside their dome, they were exhausted and demoralized. "Control, this is Alpha," Amy reported. "Mission complete. The targets are not trained for ground combat. They panic under pressure and can't track targets in natural terrain." "Copy that, Alpha. Good work." Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was learning similar lessons aboard the alien flagship. He had been observing his captors for weeks now, and he was starting to understand just how different they were from humans. The aliens had no concept of physical training. They were weak, even by the standards of their own species. They had no understanding of tactics or strategy. They had never needed to learn how to fight, so they had never learned how to win. "They're not warriors," Jake told Amy during one of their supervised communication sessions. "They're administrators. They've spent their entire history managing peaceful civilizations. They don't know how to handle conflict." "So, what do we do?" "We teach them," Jake said quietly. "We teach them what happens when you threaten a death world. Species." Dr. Ben Clark was already putting those lessons into practice. He had been developing tactics specifically designed to exploit alien weaknesses. Hit-and-run attacks that took advantage of their slow reflexes. Psychological warfare that played on their fear of the unknown. Environmental challenges that pushed them beyond their comfort zone. "We don't need to match their technology," he explained to Pete. "We need to fight them on our terms, not theirs." "What do you mean?" "I mean we make them come to us. We make them fight on our world by our rules. They can't survive in our environment without their suits and their controlled atmosphere. But we can survive anywhere." Pete was beginning to see the bigger picture. "So we turn their technology against them." "Exactly. They're using their technology as a crutch. Take away their environmental controls, and they're helpless." The plan was simple in concept, but complex in execution. Instead of trying to match the aliens' advanced weapons, they would focus on disrupting the systems that kept the aliens alive. Instead of fighting them in space, they would force them to fight on Earth's surface. The aliens had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that humanity would react like every other species they had encountered. They expected humans to be rational, to calculate the odds, to surrender when faced with superior force. They had no idea that humans had been dealing with superior force their entire evolutionary history. Humans had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and countless other disasters. They had learned to adapt, to overcome, to never give up. The aliens were about to learn that Deathworlders don't surrender. They fight. And when they fight, they don't play by anyone else's rules. As Pete Adams put it in his final briefing before the resistance began, they wanted to see what humans are capable of. Let's show them. The war was about to begin, and the aliens had no idea what they had gotten themselves into. The resistance began at dawn on a Tuesday, not because Tuesday was special, but because the aliens never expected humans to coordinate attacks across multiple time zones simultaneously. Colonel Pete Adams stood in his underground command center, watching red dots appear on screens around the world. Each dot represented a successful strike against an alien observation post. The plan was working. "Seattle post is down," came Amy Foster's voice over the radio. "Targets evacuated in panic. No casualties on our side." "Tokyo confirmed successful. Disruption of alien environmental systems," reported another voice. "London team reports alien retreat to orbital positions." Pete smiled. The aliens had expected humanity to surrender after their deadline passed. Instead, they were facing something they had never encountered before. Organized resistance from a species that refused to give up. The first attack had been Amy's idea. Instead of trying to destroy the alien posts with weapons they didn't have, her team had simply cut the power lines leading to the Seattle facility. Without electricity, the aliens couldn't run their environmental controls. The results had been immediate and dramatic. Within minutes, the aliens inside the dome were in distress. The temperature had dropped by 5 degrees and humidity had risen slightly. To humans, these were barely noticeable changes. To the aliens, they were life-threatening emergencies. The aliens had evacuated the post within an hour, fleeing back to their ships in orbit. They left behind most of their equipment, including several pieces of technology that Dr. Lisa Kane was very interested in studying. The sonic disruptors worked perfectly, Lisa reported from her new lab in the Colorado facility. The aliens' communication systems operate on frequencies that are painful to them when disrupted. We can basically give them headaches just by playing the right sound. She held up a small device that looked like a modified radio. Tony Mills helped me build these from parts we salvaged from their abandoned posts. They're not sophisticated, but they don't need to be. The aliens never designed their systems to resist interference because they never expected anyone to try. Tony Mills, a former NASA engineer, had become invaluable to the resistance. He understood alien technology better than anyone, mainly because he approached it like a puzzle to be solved, rather than magic to be feared. Their stuff is actually pretty fragile, Tony explained to a group of resistance fighters. It's designed for controlled environments. Space is predictable, no weather, no dust, no unexpected variables, but Earth is full of unexpected variables. He pointed to a piece of alien equipment that looked like it had been through a blender. This is what happens when you expose their electronics to normal Earth humidity for 6 hours. The circuits can't handle moisture in the air. Meanwhile, Sergeant Rick Stone was proving that humans could be just as unpredictable as Earth's weather. He led a team of former Special Forces soldiers who specialized in making the aliens' lives miserable. Rick's team didn't attack alien posts directly. Instead, they made it impossible for the aliens to operate normally. They would sneak up to alien facilities at night and do things like redirect nearby streams to flood the area around alien domes, or they would scatter strong-smelling substances that clogged alien air filters. The psychological effect was devastating. The aliens were used to controlling their environment completely. When humans started changing that environment in unpredictable ways, the aliens couldn't cope. They're sending distress signals constantly now, reported the communications team monitoring alien frequencies. They're asking their command ship for instructions on how to deal with quote-unquote environmental terrorism. Environmental terrorism. Rick liked that term. To humans, they were just making minor changes to the local landscape. To aliens who needed everything to be exactly controlled, it was psychological warfare at its finest. But the real breakthrough came when Captain Jake Morrison and his crew finally made their escape from the alien flagship. Jake had been planning the breakout for weeks, studying the ship's layout and the aliens' routines. The aliens had never dealt with prisoners who actively wanted to escape. Their security was designed for compliant species who accepted their fate. They had no procedures for handling humans who were constantly looking for weaknesses to exploit. Jake's plan was simple. During the daily exercise period when the guards were at their most relaxed, his team would overpower them and make their way to the shuttle bay. The aliens wouldn't expect violence because none of their previous prisoners had ever been violent. Escape went exactly as planned, mainly because the aliens were completely unprepared for it. The guards were physically weak and had no training in hand-to-hand combat. Jake's team overwhelmed them in seconds, but the real surprise came when they reached the shuttle bay. Jake had expected heavy security. Instead, he found 2 confused technicians who had never seen hostile prisoners before. "Please do not engage in unauthorized activities," one of them said politely, as if Jake and his team were tourists who had wandered into a restricted area. Jake almost felt bad about tying them up. Almost. The stolen alien shuttle gave humanity its first real look at alien technology from the inside. More importantly, it gave them their first opportunity to turn that technology against its creators. "This is incredible," Tony Mills said as he studied the shuttle's systems. "Their computers have no security protocols at all. They never expected anyone to steal their ships." Dr. Ben Clark was more interested in the shuttle's weapon systems. "These energy cannons are designed for space combat against cooperative targets. They're not built for fighting maneuverable opponents in atmosphere. What does that mean? Pete asked. It means their weapons are powerful but slow. They can destroy a space station that's just sitting there, but they can't hit a fighter pilot who knows how to dodge. That gave Pete an idea. How many pilots do we have with combat experience? Dozens. Maybe hundreds if we include retired military. Good, because I think it's time we took this fight to space. The aliens were discovering that their problems were getting worse, not better. Every time they tried to establish a new observation post, humans found new ways to make their lives miserable. Worse, the humans were adapting and learning at a speed the aliens found terrifying. Ambassador Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at reports that made no sense. Human attacks were becoming more sophisticated by the day. They were using captured alien technology to build weapons specifically designed to exploit alien weaknesses. They're learning our frequencies, his communications officer reported. They're jamming our signals and intercepting our transmissions. How is that possible? They're a primitive species. Sir, I don't think they're as primitive as we thought. Zektar was beginning to reach the same conclusion. The humans weren't just resisting, they were winning. Every engagement resulted in alien retreat and human advancement. Sir, his science officer said quietly, perhaps we should consider withdrawal. Withdrawal? We are the Galactic Harmony Council. We don't withdraw from primitive worlds. With respect, sir, I'm not sure this world is as primitive as we assumed. Zektar looked at the tactical display showing Earth below. The blue and green planet looked peaceful from space, but he was beginning to understand that its surface was a war zone unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were teaching the galaxy a new kind of warfare. One where technology wasn't enough. One where you needed the will to survive, the creativity to adapt, and the courage to never surrender. The aliens were learning what it meant to fight a Deathworld species. And they were learning that Deathworlders played by rules the galaxy had forgotten existed. The war was just beginning, and already the aliens were starting to realize they might have made a terrible mistake. 6 months had passed since the aliens first demanded humanity's surrender. Now the situation had completely reversed. The aliens were the ones retreating, and humans were advancing into space with captured alien technology. Engineer Sarah Blake stood in what used to be an alien observation post in Nevada. Now it was humanity's first off-world communications center. Banks of alien equipment hummed around her, modified by human engineers to serve human purposes. Connection established, she announced to the team gathered around her. We're now in direct contact with the Kepler system. The screen flickered to life, showing a creature that looked like a cross between a butterfly and a jellyfish. Its translator spoke in a nervous, high-pitched voice. Is this real? Are you truly the humans we have heard about? Colonel Pete Adams stepped forward. We're human, yes. Who are we speaking to? I am Counselor Vexai of the Fluthari people. We were integrated into the Galactic Harmony Council 300 years ago. We have been listening to your broadcasts about something called independence. Sarah smiled. The plan was working. For months they had been using captured alien communications equipment to broadcast messages throughout the galaxy. They were telling other species about concepts the Galactic Council had never allowed them to hear. Concepts like freedom, self-determination, and the right to resist tyranny. We want to help, Vexai continued, but we don't know how. We have never fought before. You don't need to fight, Pete replied. You just need to stop cooperating. Stop following orders. Stop letting them tell you what to do. But they have superior technology. So did we until we realized that technology isn't everything. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was proving that point in the most dramatic way possible. He stood on the bridge of a captured alien warship, leading humanity's first space fleet toward the Vorthak home system. The ship around him was impressive, but Jake knew its weaknesses. The aliens had built it for battles against cooperative opponents who followed established rules of engagement. They had never designed it to fight humans who ignored rules entirely. Contact bearing 37 Mark 15, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Bob Turner. It's a Vorthak patrol cruiser. Just one ship? Yes, sir. They're not expecting resistance in their own system. Jake smiled. That was exactly the kind of thinking that had gotten the aliens into this mess. They couldn't imagine that anyone would bring a fight to their homeworld. "Open a channel," Jake ordered. The alien captain appeared on screen, his crystalline features showing confusion and fear. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Galactic Council space. You must surrender immediately." "No," Jake replied. "You must surrender immediately." The alien's confusion deepened. "That is not how this works. We are the superior species." "Not anymore." The brief space battle that followed was completely one-sided, but not in the way the alien captain expected. Jake's crew had spent months learning to operate alien technology, while the aliens had learned nothing about human tactics. The human ship moved unpredictably, using maneuvers that the alien computer couldn't track. When the alien ship fired, it aimed for where the human ship had been, not where it was going to be. When the human ship returned fire, it targeted the alien vessel's environmental systems instead of its weapons. Within minutes, the alien ship was drifting helplessly, its life support failing and its crew unconscious from exposure to their own unfiltered atmosphere. "Boarding party, prepare to secure the vessel," Jake ordered. It was becoming routine. Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Kane was having the breakthrough that would change everything. She had been studying alien biology for months, trying to understand exactly how different they were from humans. "It's not just that they're physically weaker," she explained to the assembled leadership team. "Their entire nervous system is different. They literally cannot handle stress the way humans can." Pulled up brain scans on her monitor. "Look at this. When we expose a human to a stressful situation, certain parts of the brain activate to help deal with the threat. Fight or flight response, increased awareness, enhanced reflexes." She switched to an alien brain scan. "When we expose an alien to the same situation, their brain shuts down. They go into what we might call shock. They become unable to function." Dr. Ben Clark leaned forward. "So they're not just inexperienced at fighting. They're biologically incapable of handling combat stress." "Exactly. Evolution shaped them for cooperation and peaceful problem-solving. It never gave them the tools to handle conflict." Pete Adams saw the implications immediately. "Which means every battle is traumatic for them. More than traumatic. From their perspective, every fight is like experiencing a natural disaster. They can't adapt because their brains aren't wired for it." Meanwhile, Tony Mills was making his own discoveries about alien technology. He had been reverse engineering captured equipment for months, and what he found was changing his understanding of galactic civilization entirely. "Their technology is incredibly advanced," he reported to the engineering team. "But it's also incredibly specialized. Every piece of equipment is designed for one specific purpose, in one specific environment, with one specific set of parameters." He held up an alien communication device. "This can send messages across the galaxy instantly, but if you change the temperature by 10 degrees, it stops working. If you increase the humidity slightly, it breaks down. If you bump it too hard, the circuits fry." "So their technology is fragile?" "More than fragile. It's completely dependent on controlled conditions. They never developed robust engineering because they never needed it. Their worlds are stable, their environments are controlled, their societies are predictable. And Earth is none of those things. Earth is chaos compared to their worlds. Our weather changes constantly. Our environments are unpredictable. Our societies are built around dealing with change and uncertainty." That realization was spreading throughout the galaxy as human broadcasts reached more and more worlds. Species that had been peacefully integrated into the Galactic Council were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Why did they need permission to modify their own worlds? Why couldn't they develop their own technology? Why did the Council make all the decisions about their futures? The answers they were getting from their Council representatives were no longer satisfying. Phrases like, "for the greater good," and "maintaining harmony" suddenly sounded like excuses rather than explanations. On the world of Keth Prime, Counselor Darwin was dealing with the first protest in his species' recorded history. Thousands of Kethans had gathered outside the council administration building, holding signs with words they had learned from human broadcasts: freedom, independence, self-determination. What do these words mean? Darwin asked his aide. According to the human broadcasts, they mean the right to make your own choices about your own life. But that would lead to chaos, conflict, disagreement. The humans seem to think those things are acceptable prices to pay for freedom. Darwin looked out at the crowd of protesters. For the first time in his life, he wondered if the humans might be right. Back in space, Jake Morrison was receiving surrender messages from alien ships throughout the Vorthak system. Word of his fleet's arrival had spread quickly, and the alien response was exactly what he had expected: panic. The aliens had no protocols for defending their homeworld because they had never imagined it would need defending. Their military was designed for peacekeeping operations against cooperative populations, not for fighting determined invaders. "Sir," Lieutenant Turner reported, "we're receiving a message from the planetary government. They want to negotiate." Negotiate? What? Terms of surrender. Jake looked around at his crew. 6 months ago, they had been prisoners aboard an alien ship. Now aliens were surrendering to them. "Tell them we'll accept nothing less than complete withdrawal from Earth space in recognition of human independence." "Yes, sir." As the message went out, Jake realized that this was bigger than just Earth's freedom. Humanity had shown the galaxy something it had forgotten existed: the will to fight for what you believe in regardless of the odds. The aliens were about to learn that once you teach someone about freedom, you can't make them forget it. The war was almost over, but the real change was just beginning. 2 years after first contact, the galaxy was a very different place. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the space station that orbited Earth, watching ships from dozens of worlds dock at the newly built ports. Ships that flew the flag of the Free Worlds Alliance instead of the Galactic Harmony Council. The transformation had been faster than anyone expected. Once the idea of independence started spreading, it had moved through the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had been under council control for centuries suddenly remembered what it felt like to make their own choices. "The Andromedan delegation has arrived," reported Commander Amy Foster, who now served as Jake's chief of staff. "They're requesting membership in the Alliance." "How many does that make?" 47 worlds have joined so far. Another 23 have declared independence but haven't formally requested membership yet. Jake nodded. The Free Worlds Alliance had been Dr. Lisa Kane's idea. Instead of trying to replace the Galactic Council with another controlling organization, humanity had proposed something entirely new: a voluntary alliance where each world governed itself but could call on others for help when needed. The concept had been revolutionary. Most galactic species had never imagined that cooperation could exist without control. Down on Earth, in what used to be an alien observation post, Dr. Ben Clark was meeting with former Ambassador Zektar. The crystalline alien sat across from him in what looked like a modified environmental suit, but Ben knew it was actually a prison uniform. "I still don't understand," Zektar said, his translator making his voice sound tired and defeated. "We offered your species peace, prosperity, and a place in galactic civilization. Why did you choose war instead?" Ben studied the alien's face. After 2 years, he had learned to read Vorthak expressions. Zektar wasn't angry anymore. He was genuinely confused. "We didn't choose war," Ben replied. "We chose freedom. You were the ones who made it a war by trying to take our freedom away. But freedom leads to chaos, conflict, suffering, sometimes. But it also leads to growth, creativity, and the chance to become something better than you were before." Zektar was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "The galaxy was peaceful before humans arrived." "The galaxy was stagnant before humans arrived," Ben corrected. "There's a difference between peace and simply giving up." The trial was scheduled to begin next week. Zektar and the other council leaders would face charges of attempting to enslave an entire species. But Ben knew the real punishment had already happened. The Galactic Harmony Council no longer existed. Its member worlds had either joined the Free Worlds Alliance or declared complete independence. Meanwhile, engineer Sarah Blake was working on humanity's most ambitious project yet. The new communication network that would connect the free worlds was based on captured alien technology, but improved with human engineering principles. The difference is redundancy, she explained to a group of alien engineers who were learning human design philosophy. Council technology was efficient but fragile. If one component failed, the whole system stopped working. Human technology is messier, but it keeps working even when parts of it break. One of the alien engineers, a butterfly-like Fluthari named Kexvi, raised what might have been a hand. But inefficiency is wasteful. Inefficiency is survival, Sarah replied. On Earth, we learned that the most efficient path isn't always the best path. Sometimes you need backup plans, alternate routes, and systems that can adapt when things go wrong. Your world taught you to expect things to go wrong. Our world taught us that things always go wrong eventually. The species that survived were the ones who were ready for it. The lesson was spreading throughout the galaxy. Species that had relied on council efficiency for centuries were learning to build their own robust systems. It was messy and sometimes wasteful, but it worked. Captain Rick Stone was seeing the same principle applied to military training. Former council species were asking humans to teach them how to defend themselves. The irony wasn't lost on him. A year ago, these same species had been part of an organization trying to conquer Earth. The key to human combat tactics, he explained, to a class of mixed alien species, is that we assume our plans will fail. A Keth officer named Goralin looked confused. Then why make plans at all? Because when the plan fails, you need to know what you were trying to accomplish so you can find another way to do it. Rick pulled up a tactical display showing the battle for Vorthak Prime. Our plan was to disable their orbital defenses. When our direct assault failed, we used captured ships to make them think their own forces had turned against them. When that only partially worked, we landed ground forces in areas they thought were uninhabitable. You had 3 different plans? We had 12 different plans. We used 3 of them. The concept of multiple backup plans was foreign to most galactic species, but they were learning quickly. The galaxy was becoming a more dangerous place, but also a more resilient one. Dr. Lisa Kane had become humanity's first ambassador to the Free Worlds Alliance. Her office was in the former council headquarters, which had been converted into a meeting place for representatives from dozens of worlds. Today, she was meeting with Counselor Vexai, the Fluthari leader who had been one of the first to contact humanity during the war. The transition has been difficult for my people, Vexai admitted. For 300 years, the Council made all our decisions. Now we must learn to govern ourselves again. Growing pains, Lisa said sympathetically. Every free society goes through them. But what if we make mistakes? Then you'll learn from them and make different mistakes next time. That's how progress works. Vexai's wings fluttered nervously. The Council never allowed mistakes. The Council never allowed progress either. In his personal quarters aboard the Earth Station, Jake Morrison was writing his memoirs. The book would be called Deathworld Diplomacy: How Humanity Changed the Galaxy. But tonight he was working on the final chapter, trying to explain what had really happened. The war hadn't been won by superior technology or brilliant strategy. It had been won by showing the galaxy something it had forgotten existed: the willingness to fight for what you believe in, even when the odds are against you. The aliens had called humans Deathworlders because they came from a dangerous planet. But the real danger hadn't been Earth's environment. It had been Earth's lessons about survival, adaptation, and never giving up. The galaxy was still learning those lessons. Former Council worlds were discovering that freedom was harder than servitude, but also more rewarding. They were learning to take risks, make mistakes, and try again. Most importantly, they were learning that cooperation worked better when it was chosen rather than forced. Jake looked out at the stars where ships from dozens of worlds were traveling freely between systems that had been isolated for centuries. The galaxy was noisier now, messier, more unpredictable. It was also more alive than it had been in thousands of years. The aliens had wanted to learn what Deathworlders were capable of. They had learned, all right. They had learned that Deathworlders don't just survive. They teach others how to live. And sometimes, Jake thought with a smile, the best way to teach someone about life is to show them how to fight for it. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly the point.